Okay, so there are a couple things I wanted to. I wanted to quick go over from the last stream. So first thing I'm going to do is stash on my current work. Because I believe I left a to-do or a FIXME in my source that I wanted to get rid of. Yes. Which I don't know if it just right, because we fixed this. That was like one of the first things we did. So no need for that comment anymore. Yes. So I feel like that's something I probably normally would have caught, but just from nerves from streaming, I guess, I did not catch it. Second thing I wanted to do was come back here and go over the attributes again because I realized the last time when I was typing last time, I mistyped the actual attribute. So I had something like this. Right, and then I wanted to create the actual attribute. And I wanted to limit this to classes. And exactly as I said last time, this was like a horrible font color to pick. So in the last time when I had done this, instead of typing that left brace or left bracket, I typed a left brace. So that meant I had not actually created an attribute. Oh, this is screwing around now. Oh, great. Okay, so left brace matched by a right brace, and then so what I wanted to demonstrate or test for myself is that right I have theoretically limited this to this attribute to only classes, and then also the documentation here is like using is repeatable allows an attribute on a declaration multiple times. So by default. An attribute can only be used once per declaration. And so I was testing that out. So now this is actually an attribute, presumably, whereas last time, because I had used that brace, and of course eval wants to keep screwing around here. That was what I had typed. So that is obviously not an attribute. But this is. Which is, I guess, another non-ideal choice that was made here was to reuse one of the comment syntaxes for attributes. So, right, that's a comment. This is a comment. This is an attribute. So once again, another problem where if you actually mistype anything here, you don't actually get an attribute. And I guess we can just make sure this works. I suppose I could try the new I'm in namespace foo. The new function literal syntax. But I guess I'll just do this. And what do we have here? Oops, oh, that'll work. Get attributes. This returns a reflection attribute. And we just need the name. Oh. Wait a minute, what did? Line 9? Oh, okay, so that actually parsed. Okay, well, I guess it's a good thing I typed that out. But anything else is a comment. And I know eval really wants to like just throw random stuff in there, but it seems unnecessary. I keep wanting to call that function do instead of do it. So oh, that's right, because I don't So yeah, so the point was, anyway, back to my original point, even when I use the correct attribute syntax, nothing that I've put in here is validated or checked unless I actually instantiate the attribute. So I just wanted to come back and revisit that and make sure that was still the case. Using the correct attribute syntax, because when I was typing this out last time, I made a mistake. And I guess all that is also to add to kind of to the list of unideal choices. That's sort of reusing this comment syntax did not seem like an especially great choice, because although it's good to know, I guess, that the parser will catch an unclosed open brackets here. Any other sort of mistake with that syntax will just be parsed as a comment. So anyway, so that is that. And then the other thing I wanted to do, so we can pop all our stash. So I think this was in run. So I was a little mystified because PHP stand, when I was getting this callable down here, was giving me a hard time that I was passing either a callable or null into this function, and this function is only supposed to take a callable. So let's just pull up ReflectionFunction here. getClosure. And here in the method signature, it does not indicate that it indicates it only returns a closure. But if you come here into the documentation, it also says it returns null in case of an error. And it's not clear to me, right? This is an undocumented function. I guess I could check under method whether it's documented. getClosure. It's not documented here. And there's not really a comparable function in ReflectionFunctionAbstract. Because it seems like sometimes they will make the choice to just document some method in one class, but not the others. For instance, getAttribute is apparently documented under reflection class, but not under reflection function or necessarily other reflection classes. So anyway, the point is it's unclear what would cause an error in this case, right? We've only reflected this function if we know it exists, and presumably callable. So I'm not sure under what cases this would error out, but instead of just asserting, we probably need to do something to handle this in case it does ever error, which I guess would be, well, it depends on where it fails, I guess. So I suppose I could maybe just throw a FIXME in here. So let's see how many times we call this. So this is in run directory. Oops. And test run group. Yeah, so those are the two places it occurs, but it's basically going to occur everywhere. So maybe just throw away FIXME on this for now. Because depending on how this all shakes out, we may be able to centralize this logic. So if I just flag it right now, if it comes to that, I can decide at that point what to do. Or it may also be the case, we want to handle this differently depending on where we do it, or we may also, or I may also want to try and instantiate all the closures before we get into any of this logic, right? Because it's going to be a little bit strange if, for instance, there's a setup and a teardown, and we can get a closure for the setup and not a closure for the teardown. But I sort of just didn't take this too seriously the last time because I can't, again, why would this fail if this is an existent function? But the fact that I guess it can fail means I should be prepared for that eventuality. Okay, so, and again, that might have been something I consider a little bit more seriously if I wasn't streaming, seeing as I'm still trying to get over my streaming nerves. Okay, so now to continue on with what we were doing here. So here in this tests file, basically, for anybody that may have been watching me in previous streams, which has not been many people, Essentially, I'm parsing directories, well, searching in directories and PHP files for tests, and then any test files I find, I parse for tests, and then as a result of that parsing, I end up with all these basically classes that have test information that I've parsed in there. And so up until now, basically, see, directory tests and file tests aren't really good examples, but once we start getting down to class test and function test, tests that are actually code in source files, you can see here that I have properties that keep track of which file this test was in, the namespace and name of the test. So I was basically doing all this stuff manually, but in order to add support for attributes, I needed to use reflection. So now that we're using reflection, instead of hanging on to all this information, I can just hang on to the reflected code structures. And similarly with like setup and teardown functions here, I was basically just holding on to the string name of the function. Although I'm surprised to see that there. I'll have to take a look at the code, but like here, up here in a class test, there's this should be like a setup method and a teardown method, and I've typed it as a nullable string. Nullable because there may not be a setup and a teardown. But this can all be replaced now with reflection functions or reflection methods or reflection classes. So I had sort of started that process already with these test run groups. So let's see here. Oh, this has the run info. So the only part in the test run group that has this is this run info here. So that was what I changed. Sort of curious, I don't have the group in test run group. I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked at all this code, so I'll have to take a look at that again. Also, like I know there's a reason I have the tests both here in a test run group and here in test run. But I don't remember why, and it's something that ideally I would be able to get rid of. So the last time I streamed, I took care of run info here and also directory test. So I guess I can just make sure stuff is still working. And patiently wait for PHP scan to analyze my code. So yes, everything is still working. And so the next thing I can then change is FileTest here. I think that's the only thing I'll need to do. So I might just expand this over here. So now we need to come into function discover file here. And some of this I already did because we updated file tests can also have declare these run groups in them, and that was already updated. So some of this has already been done. So it looks like the two things that need to be done here are the class name. So reflect the class. So let's just hang on to this class. We probably don't need those anymore. I probably actually don't need this type class anymore because I will know what type of test it is based on the fact that this is a reflection class. But looks like that's the only case there. And then we have function name. So then we'll reflect that, and this will just be function. And I'm wondering actually how I'm using yeah, that we want to keep. That instance we want to keep. And then this is in directory setup, so so how are we? Okay, so we go through, right? We get our token iterator to parse all the tokens in the file and then start parsing whether we find classes or functions. If we find a test, we basically add it to this, well, to the input array, to this tests array. We basically just copy that over. And then we just iterate all that. So so what do we end up doing here then? Well, here we discover the class, so this sets up all that. But here then we basically just assign everything. So maybe the thing to do, at least for oops. So where's our test info? So for classes, I guess what I'll do is well, what we could do is just leave this alone right now, to be honest with you. And just handle right, we're updating our file tests, so I can just take care of handling setup and teardown. So class name, I believe that's it. And then function name down here. Where do we instantiate the function? Well, I guess I got to set all this back. So test info. So we set the type. It's file path. And then info namespace equals namespace. I believe I just have that saved up there. And then name equals class name. And then here it's a function, same good thing. I deleted the type equals name equals file path, name info namespace equals the namespace. And then here this is still going to be the function name. So, but for setup function, we want to set it now just to the function. Same thing for setup file. Actually, we may not want to do that for setup function yet, because I believe this setup function ends up, yeah, getting assigned here. So oops. So where are we here? So setup file. Oh, this is a setup runs. Okay. So I think setup function. Yeah, let's just leave that for now. Let's just do one thing at a time here. Teardown file, that will be function. And then teardown run, that should have already been fixed. All right, so that should be all for that. Let's see what that leaves us. All right. So 380. So this is in run file. Yeah, so this is going to be the same thing here. Name global equals file setup closure. Not forget our oops. And then this is going to be callable, and then we're going to have the same thing in 406. I think that should probably fix that up. And in the process, break some tests. So let's see what happens here. Okay. I think this is the same thing going on. What do we have? Just two failures. So I think this is the same thing going on as before, where the test is actually still a good test, but now since this is holding reflection functions instead of just strings representing those functions, the comparison is failing. So this is in 60. But then that's called from test discovery. Discover file, where are we here? 33. Events, where do the events come from? Or past the events, okay? So that's called from 42. Oh, you know what? I think this is, right, so what this is failing is the actual error message. So instead of just getting the name of the functions, this class is being cast to a string, I guess. So, and I think, oops. Yeah, we no longer need to use the old version of this. And where is this at? Also in Discover File. Well, teardown function, I guess we still need, and also setup function. But now those will use the new log fixture error that was written last stream. And where is this? That's Discover Class. So maybe that's all that needs to happen. Okay, cool. All right, so files are done. Now can move on to classes. So let me just take another look at these actually real quick. So that's the path. That's an array of test runs, and then tests. That's the run info, and then a test, and then run info. This is the name of the run. And then setup and teardown, directory test. It's the name, that's the group. Setup and teardown functions, and then the actual tests in the directory. For file test, that is going to be the file path, the run group, and then setup and teardown functions, and then the array of tests. And then ClassTest should be the file, the namespace, and the name. So all of this can get replaced with a reflection class, which is probably worth doing. But what I think I'll do is I'll pull this group out separate, maybe. Put this stuff up here, because all that can get collapsed down to a reflection class. But at the moment, I think I'll just handle the setup and teardown, which are going to be reflection methods. Okay. So we have method. Oh, and yeah, and this I just cheesed. because I didn't want to have to go do all this when I was just implementing the basic functionality. So I might still cheese it. For now, because there's also going to be, well, right now I've using function tests for both regular function and methods. I might end up splitting that out. We'll see though. But the point being, there's the setup function and teardown function actually get used in the function test. So here in the class, this is this setup and this teardown, which sets up and tears down the entire object. So I guess that's the only thing I need to fix there. And then we'll use the new error functions, and then that might be all that needs to be done there. That being the case, let me just shrink this back down and see what we get. Okay, and that is okay, so this is one of my assertions failing, because again, for some reason, the static analyzer is having a hard time here. But let's see, reflection method. I guess what I want to be, what I'm curious about is whether get name includes the class name in it, right? This is reflection method. Of course, I'm sure this is undocumented. Oh, I can, really? I can just, reflection, this is a reflection function. Okay, I can just use this property, it looks like. Is this actually documented? Now it has a link like it's documented. I'm not sure where it thinks it's linking me to. Anyway. Okay, but where were we here then? 9441. So this is going to be name. The method here, this is where we're going to get the closure. So get closure. So this is going to be so this just takes the object and then oops. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter if we explicitly check for null or is callable. So that should take care of that. And then same thing's going to happen for teardown. This is going to be so I think that should probably take care of that. Yep, okay, that looks good. And I guess then so we've done class tests, and now we need to do function tests. So I kind of wonder, well, I guess since I'm only using the one function test right now, I'll just try that and see what happens. But I guess really the right thing to do here is split this out. But anyway, oh, so this is the actual, so there's a bunch of weird things we have to do here to account for the fact that this could be, well, I guess it's not really weird, but that this could be either a function or a method is, we have to keep track of the name separately, and I'm not sure, I have to check what's used for the name, but anyway, because in a function, the name of the function doubles up as it's callable, whereas a method, if it's a method, you also need an instance of the class to which the method belongs. And then for the same thing here, we can actually get rid of this. So this is going to be well, I'm just thinking here because right, because for a function, the actual setup function, and for a method as well, so for an actual function, a plain function for a method, the setup and teardown functions for them are going to be the same function, right? The setup function is declared in the file, and it's called before every function, and then the same thing for an object. Setup is declared in that class, and then it's run before every method, every test method. And then teardown works the same way. So and I guess it depends, right? I guess I shouldn't overthink it right now, which is what I'm doing. We'll just make this a I think I am going to actually have to split this up. Because, right, this is no longer going to be a callable, it's going to be either a reflection function or a reflection method. unless I just unless I basically just keep this the same way right now. One thing I want to check though is I'm kind of surprised for reflection method there isn't like an option to get like the full name like that has the class in front of it. I mean, these are all inherited from ReflectionFunctionAbstract, so of course it's possible that getName returns a different value than just name, which I guess we can check. Um, so let's echo the method. Now let's just echo this and see what we get. So it just gives us literally just the function name. Okay. And there's apparently no option to we've already checked this with the property. Export, getClosure, get declaring class. That gives us the actual class. Let's see what happens if we just stuff this into a string. We get that. And none of these, I suspect, will. So get name we already tested. Get short name already tested. Okay. So that's somewhat annoying. Well, what do we get for class then? Okay. But then, of course, that ties the namespace to the class. So, all right. So what I am going to do is just, I think, we'll stick function test up there. We don't need this. Well, let's just leave function test alone right now. And do this method test. So this will be reflection method. This will also be a reflection method. Don't think we need those anymore. And I think all of this can go away. So I have the group, the reflection method, or to set up the teardown, and then the test itself. So what do we have? Discover class. We pass in the group. Well, use the reflection method here. Use the reflection method here. I just want to make sure I updated that. That will probably end up screwing up a bunch of things, but oh well. So here is going to be method test. This is going to be just the class. Oops. Oh, actually, all right, so what are we saving in tests here now? The method, this is going to be reflection method now. And this is going to be for each test as test. Just make sure I'm not using that anywhere. Does not look like I am. That's in the file. Now it's going to be a new method test. The group is going to be group. It's going to be the test. The method is going to be the test. And then if setup function, that's going to be file namespace class function name. Wait, what am I doing? Where am I actually setting? a setup function and teardown function. Oh, I know. I can't do this yet because, right, I need an instance of the object. So that's what's going on there. Might want to keep this name. I don't know. But anyway. Class name, test name. Let me just comment that out for the moment. And then this is going to be, yeah, setup function, teardown function, and then we save that. So let's see what we do with that. Probably, yeah, this is what I was afraid of. But anyway, let's just plug through these here. MethodTest method does not help. Oops. Of course, I looked previously to make sure I wasn't using the variable method, but I immediately overrid it right down there. So, so now why does this think this is a string? Because it is a string. Oh, and this is just going to be set up and teardown. And where is it saying? This is going to be method. Yeah. Okay, so okay, so get run name, that should be fine. So this is what's annoying, right? We're going to have to build this name manually, so I think where's our method test? This is going to be make that a name. Where did we comment out the name here? So that will be okay. So this is going to be setup. This is going to be getClosure, an instance of the object here. Insert that's callable, and then we're going to get setup name for test name. So that should be okay there. And then we're going to do oops. What did I call this? The test. All right. Test method getClosure. And then, oh, here are the, okay, test teardown. Actually, I need to, so this is going to be, do the same thing we did up here. It's going to be getClosure. Closure. Really don't like spelling closure correctly. Teardown, and then this is going to be teardown name. So I think that might take care of that. 510. Oh, test. Wait a minute. Did I not save all my files? It would help if I saved all my files. All right. This is still in run. Constructor expects oh, well, I wonder if I'm going to want to split this out then. Let's see here. What are we're getting whatever existing state, the logger. Well, let's just right now make this union. Let's see how messy this gets. And then this is going to be the same thing up here. Function test or method test. And where do we use test in here then? So test name, that should be okay. That's going to probably be a problem. So what I may want to do is Well, actually, this may not necessarily be a problem, but what I think I do want to do, what I call it. I called it method. I think I'll just call it test under function test. I think I've just got it called test. So test is going to be method. So test method, that's going to be test. Okay, so then this is going to be, where's the name coming from? We're already getting the name. I think this name is being, oh, wait a minute. Where am I here? Oh, requires. So this name is coming from here. So this test, test get namespace, and then class, this is going to be test, except a test method won't have that. So maybe yeah, I think I'll just pull these out up here. Namespace equals this. Test, get namespace. And then class equals this test instance of MethodTest. And this will be test. Test class, otherwise this will be null. Let's just throw this in parentheses just to make sure we don't have any precedence issues here. So this is going to be namespace, and then it's going to be class. Oops, what line am I on here? Okay. All right, so now test, we use test here. They should both have a group. Name. This is probably going to cause a problem. But that should be good for there. So this context object here that I just ended up updating, it's how implement a handful of features in the test framework, like declaring dependencies between tests, or what else do I do? Subtests, and I feel like there's other stuff. You can do per test teardown, so in order to do that, it holds the context, basically holds a reference to whatever the current test being executed is. And so now this can be both a function test or a method test. So sorry, I just noticed my error here, but my error there, and I'm confused about. Oh, right. Okay, that's right. We haven't updated function tests yet. So But anyway, so yeah, this context takes a basically a reference to whatever the current test is, and so now since I'm splitting out method tests and function tests, it's going to have to handle both of those. So I guess for now, I'll just be stupid and applies this test namespace, I believe. Where? Oh, I put the parentheses in the wrong place there. And why does it think there's? Oh, because it's supposed to be test. This or this. It should be that, not test. Am I losing my mind here? Probably. That's a nice succinct name. Is it possible to get something besides a name of a namespace? No. Okay. This test class. Oh, that's okay. That's why that was all screwed up. What's going on 168? Oh, yeah, well, like I said. Okay, parameter 3, expect string, class or null given. Okay, well, it's easy enough to fix. And then what was it, 168. Final class function dependency. So and then this is going to be the same thing. And then what's going on here in 549? Record test result. So where are we? Result. So where do we use name, group, name. Oh, I don't know why I thought that was result. It's test. Add run. Okay, 195. So add run from dependency. So run index. So in this file here is where I handle resolving dependencies between tests. It's basically just a graph, and we walk it, but if and directory test from, okay. So again, this is going to be just yank that, add add function test. It's going to be dependency. So what do we do with so this is starting to get just mildly annoying because of the different handling the two different cases here, which is all just going to collapse down to essentially being the same thing once these get sorted out. So what do we, okay, well, let's see what else we do here with dependency. So let's just grab file equals we'll do dependency test get, don't want to resume, get file name. Otherwise it'll be dependency file. So okay, that looks fine. So am I still? Okay, so our FileTest. All right, let's see what we do in here. Okay, equals there's a get file name, otherwise it'll be dependency file, if dependency instance of MethodTest, then we'll do dependency test class, dependency test class, and then dependency, what is function? Function Oh, I see what I'm doing. Right, this is still in, yeah. So now I am pulling out the actual test from the class itself. So this is going to be dependency test name. Otherwise, life is simple. It's not really important. By the way, hi Chacombe Sam. I just saw your chat. I don't know how long that's been. Let me I'll deal with it later. The backslash is not really important, but for any built-in function for PHP, I always add an explicit backslash, or I can't speak, backslash, and then for my own functions, my user-defined functions, it gets even worse because I prefix them all with namespace, like you can see here. And just the reason for that is because the way namespacing works for functions in PHP, if you don't fully qualify any function name, PHP will basically look in the current namespace, and if it can't find it there, then it looks in the global namespace. So essentially it does like a lookup to fall back until it either finds a function or it doesn't find one. And so just to avoid the overhead of that lookup, I just fully qualify all my function names. So that means for functions in the global namespace like assert, you just prefix it, and that means it's a global function name. And for functions, my own namespace, I just use the word namespace, which resolves automatically to whatever the local namespace is, which, like in this case, is Strangetest. So that is why I do that. I guess you can say it's a micro optimization, but over time, I think it adds up. And once you get in the habit of it, you don't really even think about it. So again, I don't know how long ago you asked your question or if you're still there, but hopefully that answers it. And usually I have timestamps on my chat here, but every time, of course, I log out of Twitch, it resets my chat settings. So sorry, I'm just looking at my chat settings now. Yeah, thanks for the question. I hope that was a useful answer. But give me a second here just to set up now my chat preferences. So I can see everything. Okay. All right. Yeah, they just help with preventing name conflicts, and they are actually pretty nice. Normally, I have the problem with namespaces in PHP is they're handled inconsistently based on whether because you can namespace class names, function names, and constants, and both constants and functions, if you well, when it looks up a constant name or a function name, it automatically falls back to the global namespace if it doesn't find the name in the local namespace. But for class names, it doesn't do that fallback. So you basically have to make every class name explicit. And so that inconsistency is a little bit annoying. I mean, they did that to make life easy for, people using global functions. And when they first introduced the feature, so you can use, I'm not sure how familiar, but like if I wanted to use a class in another namespace, I could do use foo var class name. And then within my own code here, I can just use like, what's going on here? Class equals new class name instead of like fully qualifying it. But when they first introduced this feature, you couldn't do that with constants or classes. So there's no way to qualify a class name or I'm sorry, a function name or a constant name without being explicit the entire time, putting either that, because you can also write, instead of doing this, you could do new foo bar class name. That's the exact same thing. But then I think 5.4 or 5.5 added use function, and then use, and you could just type a function name here. And then also use constant. So this way you could bring function names and constant names into the local namespace. And like I could just use function assert. Although assert's a little bit of a special case, but then instead of having to type assert all the time, I could just type assert, and it would know that this is a global assert function. So, but the reason why I'm not just doing that is because this is a testing framework and I'm trying to support PHP all the way back to 5.3. I can't use newer features, so I'm left with explicitly specifying all my function names and constant names. So if I was writing for newer versions of PHP, like 8.0 or whatever's current, I would definitely be using use much more often. So now where am I here? String or false? Let me guess. Get file name returns a false. Oops. Grr, okay. Well, let's just assert file okay, so I think that should sort out the rest of this. And now we're in targets. Oops. $467. This is some of the messiest code in the framework here, so it's a little bit unfortunate I have to sort through this. So the source targets file here is where I parse out basically you can specify individual tests on the command line if you don't want to run your entire test suite. And I call those test targets. And this is the file here where I sort that all out. And it's actually, for a feature that may not actually be used all that often, this is some of the most complicated code in the whole framework. And it's straightforward, and I don't know how much simpler it could be, but it is still complicated. So So class, function specifier. So let's just see if I make this a let's just see what happens if I do that. And then well, times 17. So file. So why does this think, oh. So we'll do, I wonder if I should just, well, let's just, instead of doing this for function specifier, I may just want to make this a method specifier. And actually, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. I think this will probably just make life a little bit easier. So where am I here? Path specifier, class specifier. Oops. So let's throw a function specifier up there, and we'll put method specifier in here. This will now be method specifiers. So only be a method or a function test, and then these will be a method test. Okay, so now instead of going through all that, this is just going to be a method specifier. Yeah. Like I'm getting two errors there. One because I was trying to assign a method or a function specifier to a class and a function to a or a method test to a function specifier. And so I suspect this has got to be named now. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I've gone through static analysis. Oh. So is this all failures? This is all failures, and I suspect all these failures now are failing because I have changed, well, I've added these method tests. So before I dig into all this, I guess I'm gonna go grab a quick glass of water. So I'm gonna step away from the keyboard for a few minutes and refill my water. Okay, I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm obviously back. I stepped to the washroom too, so I took a little bit longer than I expected. But I have a fresh glass of water, and I also grabbed some Triscuits. So if you hear some crunching a little bit later, I'll try and remember to mute myself. All right. Now comes the fun part of sorting through this. So let's just take this one at a time. So this is test discovery. What do we have? Test. discover directory. So line 185. But we just call that from 130. I wonder what the chances are. This just calls out to make tests. It does. Okay, so edit tests, setup. So essentially with these tests, I basically where am I here? Right, for lack of really better way to do it, I basically have an array here of everything, or of what the test, what we expect to discover, and well, in this case, I'm handing it I'm doing discovery on an entire directory of tests. So it seems like the simplest way to sort of assert that we've discovered what we expect to be finding is I basically just build up this array, which is a little bit of a cheesy way to do it, but it seems like it's, well, I don't know, they're tests too, so I guess I was being lazy, but I could sort of more formally structure this as some sort of class or something. But anyway, I just sort of manually build up everything we expect to find. And then for most of these tests, right, there's just different conditions I'm looking for. So I just have a couple of variables that contain everything we expect to define, or expect to find. Then we call this function the assert discovered function, which actually runs discovery on whatever the path is that we've handed to it. And then it takes what we expect to discover and then manually constructs basically what we expect the discovery to hand back. And then we see if the two things are equal. And it'd be nice to do more strict of a comparison than just equality, but with PHP classes, if you do an equality comparison instead of like an identity comparison between the classes, an identity comparison checks to see if two classes are literally the same instance of the class, whereas if you do an equality comparison between two classes, it basically checks to see if the two classes are the same, or the two objects are the same class type, and then all the properties for in those classes have the same value. And which is actually really nice to have that built in, except that the comparison between the two properties is also a loose comparison, and loose comparison can be a little goofy sometimes. But there's, without writing sort of a manual comparison function, that's the most straightforward way to do it. So basically this make tests here, which I have in the setup file for my tests, just walks through the array that was handed to it and constructs instances of all the classes that the discover should do. So I suspect all the problems here are yeah, in make class test. So oh, and we actually just have a make function test. So that makes life really easy for us. So this is going to be a method test. Let's call it so we don't need the file, we don't need the namespace. Actually, let's just, before we get rid of all this stuff, we need that. We need that. this is going to be, the test is going to be a new reflection method, but I believe we need to pass in the class name. Yeah, so we need the, oh, yeah, okay, we have class name, and then setup and teardown are, so test setup. So I guess if group spec setup, and test setup is just going to be, reflection method, and that's again going to be class name and the spec setup. Oops. And same thing here, except for teardown. And then the rest of this, test. This is just going to be spec function, I believe. Oops. Okay, let's see what that does for us. So why? That's what's happening with all of these? Why aren't I getting a name here, I wonder? Um, Class name. Am I supposed to do that? Okay. No. Oh, wait a second. Expected is oh, so we have okay. Uh oh, well yeah, that's quite dumb of me. So I thought I was so confused because I thought the the method name was not getting set here, but again, I just need to read my output. The dash means this is expected, and the plus means this is what it actually was. So it means this was being set, but I actually wasn't setting the method name in here where I was creating the method test. So it helps to pay attention to what you're looking at. Okay, so that reduced the number of failures quite significantly. So where are we here? Oh, targets. Test targets. What do we have in here? Test process user targets. Overrides. So what does assert targets do? Apparently I call that function a lot. Okay. Make tests from targets. Okay, so I make tests from run target. So let me guess, make test from class target. Just going on a limb there. And okay. Oh, well, I guess I probably have a method target, huh? Oh, this is a reference to. Okay, but where am I setting this? Not actually creating. Okay, so what was the tester failing here? Test overrides method targets with class targets. So we're expecting these method targets, but instead we're getting expected runs, run one. So runs tests. Test1.php. Tests test1. Make test from So I think what is happening here, although I'm not sure why, is it's expecting well, this is really weird. So this is what's being expected. But what I'm actually getting is a reference to these, which I'm very confused why that would be failing. Let's take a little closer look at what's going on here. So override method targets with class targets. So I think what's being tested here is if you specify both some methods on class test1.1, and then later on you specify the entire class, that the entire class gets right, we just end up testing the entire class. Okay, so this is the arguments that are passed in. This is the expected targets. Okay, so assert targets. Incorrect targets, okay. So make tests from targets. Let's test overrides. So let's just have this up here. If this targets okay, if this test, so what are we doing here? Assert targets. Do I have tests set anywhere? Does not look like it. Expected equals Okay, so we do have, oh, so we discover, okay, so we preemptively discover all the tests. Okay, so that is set. So assert targets, so make tests from targets. So if this targets, well, as it overrides. Well, this shouldn't really matter, I guess. Well, what do we have here? We actually do have a testing group. This set target, okay, runs is not set. Because run info.